My name is Roseanne Padilla from Group 3 and I will be your reporter for today.
Learning objectives. Today, you are expecting to learn about the difference between representation and non-representational art. Describe the source and kinds of subject, and identify the content in art. Subject and content. Subject, the visual focus or the image that may be extracted from examining the artwork, the what. Subject, basically, ito yung object, yung topic, or yung mismong visible image sa isang artwork. Content, the meaning that is communicated by the artist or the artwork, the why. Content is not the subject or things in the painting or artwork. Content is the communication of ideas, feelings, and reactions connected with the subject. I have an example image here. So what is the subject? The subject is the gate and the leaves. How about the content? Kung titignan mo ng mabuti yung image na yon, anong idea yung pumapasok sa isip mo? For me, nung tinitignan ko yung larawan na yan, naiisip ko kung ano yung mga nasa likod or behind that gate. If I'm going to enter that gate, what would it be? Is it a garden? Kung garden naman siya, bakit siya madilim, di ba? Or maybe the artist is waiting for someone to unlock the gate to set her or him free. So basically, content is the ideas, feelings, and reactions or yung mga nais ipahiwatig sa atin ng artist about sa kanyang masterpiece. Next is the form, the development and configuration of the artwork, how the elements and the medium or material are put together, the how. Form is the visual organization of the artwork, how the artist has used line, shape, value, color, and etc. Next is the types of subject. Representational art. This type of art have subjects that refer to objects or events occurring in the real world. In painting and sculpture, the term representational art usually refers to images that are clearly recognizable or kung ano yung pinoportrait nila. Also termed figurative arts because the figures depicted are easy to make out and decipher. Also termed figurative art because it contains figures or objects from the real world that may easy to figure out. Example of representational art. The tree doesn't have to be green or even upright, but it must be clearly represent or be recognizable as a tree. If representational art or figurative art represents objects or events in the real world or usually looking recognizable, the non-representational art is the opposite. Next is the non-representational art. What is non-representational art? Work that does not depict anything from the real world is called non-representational art. Non-representational art may simply depict shapes, colors, lines, but may also express things that are not visible katulad ng mga emotions tsaka feelings. These are the example of non-representational art. Kung titignan mo, parang wala silang definite meaning. Pero kung titignan mo ito ng mabuti or papakiramdaman mo, parang pinaglalaroan niya yung feelings tsaka yung mga emotions mo. The beauty of non-representational work is that it is up to us to give it a meaning through our own interpretation. Is non-representational are the same with abstract? Abstract art, non-figurative art, non-objective art, and non-representational art are closely related terms. They are similar but perhaps not of identical meaning. Abstract art that does not attempt to represent an accurate depiction of visual reality but instead uses shapes, colors, forms, and gestural marks to achieve its effect. And these are the example of abstract art. The main purpose of abstraction is not to tell story, but to encourage involvement and imagination. Sources and kinds of subject. For non-representational art, a higher level of perceptiveness and insight might be required to fully understand the feeling, emotion, or concept behind the work. For representational art, it is easier to infer the subject matter because from the figures depicted in the artwork there is already a suggestion as to its implication. The following are the sources of subject. Nature. Depictions of the nature can also be about the intellectual thought and spirituality. Art involving nature can be done simply to display the beauty of the natural world around us, to make scientific observations in an environment, or to open our minds to philosophical ideas about our own connection to the nature and beyond. History. Art history, also called art historiography. Historical study of the visual arts, being concerned with identifying, classifying, describing, evaluating, interpreting, and understanding the art products and historic development of the fields of painting, sculpture, architecture, the decorative arts, drawing, printmaking. The history of art focuses on the objects made by humans for any number of spiritual, narrative, philosophical, symbolic, conceptual, documentary, decorative, and even functional and other purposes, but with a primary emphasis on its aesthetic visual form. Greek and Roman mythology. The art of the ancient Greeks and Romans is called classical art. This name is used also to describe later periods in which artists look for their inspiration to this ancient style. This first and greatest period of classical art began in Greece about the middle of the 5th century BCE. Judeo-Christian tradition. The term Judeo-Christian is used to group of Christianity and Judaism together, either in reference to Christianity's derivation from Judaism, Christianity's borrowing of Jewish scripture, or the Hebrew Bible to constitute the Old Testament of the Christian Bible, or due to perceived parallels or commonalities in Judeo-Christian ethics shared by the two religions. Sacred Oriental texts. Or religious traditions have certain texts that are considered sacred. Believers attach significance to texts may offer insights into the life guidance for living, express a relationship between a people and their God or God. And other works of art. So those are the sources of subject. Next is kinds of subject. History or yung mga past events. Still life. Still life includes all kinds of man-made or natural objects. Cut flowers, fruit, fish, game, wine, and so on. Animals, figures, a representation in painting or sculpture, especially of the human form. Nature, the physical world and everything in it, such as plants, animals, mountains, oceans, stars, and etc. Landscapes. A landscape is the visible features of an area of land, its landforms, and how they integrate with natural or man-made features. Seascapes. A seascape is a photograph, painting, or other work of art which depicts the sea, in other words, an example of marine art. Cityscapes. An artistic representation of a city. Mythology. Mythology, a collection of myths, especially one belonging to a particular religious or cultural tradition. Dreams. A series of thoughts, images, and sensations occurring in a person's mind during sleep. And lastly is fantasies, as something that is produced by the imagination, an idea about doing something that is far removed from normal. Next is the content in arts, the meaning or message that is expressed or communicated by the artwork. Levels of meaning. In understanding the content of art, it is important to note that there are various levels of meaning. The first one is the factual meaning, the most rudimentary level of meaning, for it may be extracted from the identifiable or recognizable forms in the artwork and understanding how these elements relate to one another. The artist creates harmony in the elements of art to fully understand the meaning or the message of the artwork to the audience. The only art which is factual is the one in which the both subject and object are one and the same. In other words, the experience of the art is the art itself. The second one is the conventional meaning, pertains to the acknowledgement interpretation of the artwork using motifs, signs and symbols, and other ciphers as basis of its meaning. These conventions are established through time, strengthened by recurrent use and wide acceptance by its viewers or audience and scholars who study them. Kapag kasi sinabing conventional, ito yung traditional forms that is repeatedly done and it is widely acceptable kasi yun na yung nakagawian natin. In other words, originality. The painting and traditional media that used most often by the artists are watercolors, dyes and colored inks, pencils, pen and ink, charcoal and pastels, oil and acrylic paint, and lastly is the colored pencil. Those are the commonly used materials when making an artwork. And the last but not the least is the subjective meaning. When subjectivities are consulted, a variety of meanings may arise when particular work of art is read. These meanings stem from the viewers or audience's circumstances that come into play when engaging with art is what we know, what we learned, what we experience, what values we stand for. Meaning may not be singular, rather multiple and varied. Subjective in art is the word how we tend to explain how different people can respond to a work of art in different ways. It is based on personal opinions and feelings rather than on agreed facts. A painting might be beautiful to one person and ugly to another, but the material object remains unchanged. So let's talk about the Spoliarium painting by Juan Luna. The Spoliarium is a painting by Filipino painter Juan Luna. Luna, working on canvas, spent 8 months completing the painting, which depicts dying gladiators. The painting was submitted by Juan Luna to the opposition National de Bellas Arts in 1884 in Madrid, where it garnered the first gold medal. The subject of the painting is the gladiator. Gladiator came from the Latin word gladius, which means sword. In other words, gladiator, meaning swordsman, was an armed combatant who entertained audiences in the Roman Republic and Roman Empire in violent confrontations with other gladiators, wild animals, and condemned criminals. What style did Juan Luna use in Spoliarium? He used a style which is a mix of realistic art and representational art. Realism encompasses almost all genres, including landscapes and portraits. And if you look closely at one of the legendary Filipino paintings in our history, the Spoliarium by the great Juan Luna will definitely be a great example of realistic arts, because it's dark, riveting, and captures the hardships of the dying gladiators. So what mood does the Spoliarium painting depicts? The mood and visual effect that this painting portrays can be considered to be suffering, mourning, pain, and defeat. This artwork depicts the inner political and socio-cultural views as well as the sentiments of a Filipino master painter. So, kung tatanungin nyo kung nasan na yung spolyarium painting ni Juan Luna, nakadisplay siya ngayon sa National Museum of Fine Arts. Why spolyarium is the most valuable artwork in the National Museum? Spolyarium was the kind of painting that lent itself to the patriotic needs of the Filipinos, on which Rizal and others project a nationalistic symbolism that helped rouse the Filipinos to rise up against the political oppressions of their Spanish colonizers.